Coming up on Look Today, well, Lake George will host a law enforcement officers weekend. I've got details. And the American Legion in Hudson Falls opens up a museum. More on that coming up. And we've got updates on economic development in our region. It's all ahead on Look Today. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jay Hood Jackson, and this is Look Today. On tonight's program, I sit down with Dr. Christine Duffy. She's the president of SUNY Adirondack, and she's here to talk about a new building that's being constructed to expand their STEM program. I also sit down with Ron Montesi. He's a county supervisor for Warren County, and we're joined by Mike Consulo. He's the executive director of the Lake George Regional Chamber of Commerce, and they're here to talk about Italian American Civic Club and what they do and how they give back to the community. Plus, we've got your weather for the Tri-North counties, but first, these headline stories. Well, in our lead story, a press conference took place to announce that Lake George will host a law enforcement officers weekend. Now, this new event is scheduled for May 19th through the 21st. It's aimed at honoring and celebrating all forms of law enforcement, and the event will provide a variety of activities and seminars for officers and their families. Well, we were at the press conference where we spoke to Mayor Bob Blaze.
Well, I think we've got a big winner on our hands with the Law Enforcement Officers Weekend. 3 days of events, seminars, memorial service, competition for these men in blue, ladies in blue to come and enjoy themselves in one of America's most beautiful resorts.
And we also spoke to Austin Glickman. He's a New York City police patrolman.
Law Enforcement Weekend really started about 2 years ago, the idea of Law Enforcement Weekend, after a lot of the high-profile events that were occurring around the country and the stress level that officers deal with on a daily basis, now coupled upon some of these high-profile events. I came up with the idea to try and get the officers to come together, be able to relax and enjoy themselves for a full weekend without having to worry about what's going on back at their departments.
Great idea. All right, in other news, the American Legion in Hudson Falls debuted its Veterans Museum. Now, the museum is now open, but still in the process of collecting more artifacts and items. Well, according to Post Commander Mike Cameron, the museum is also collecting accounts from veterans about their experiences. We spoke to Mike about this.
We're expanding all the time, so if we can get anything, we'd really appreciate it.
Now, we also spoke to Gloria Cameron. She's the first vice president of the American Legion Auxiliary.
Yes, anybody that would like to donate something to the museum, we more than willingly will take it in and prepare it. The only thing we ask is give us some background so that when people come in, they know what it's about and where it came from.
Switching from news to weather. Well, today saw somewhat clearer skies, very little sunshine, and the temperatures hung in there at the low 40s. Well, let's see how the rest of the week is shaping up. For a more detailed look at our weather, we're going to head to the Glens Falls Weather Center for a look at your first forecast. Back to the news. Well, it's an important time for economic development in our region. Recently, our area has been awarded a number of different grants. For instance, Glens Falls was recently chosen to receive the Downtown Revitalization Initiative Award of $10 million. Now, this has sparked new life into the area, paving the way for more incentives to improve the whole region. Now, Lake George has been awarded two $25,000 grants for Shepherd Park. Now, these are allocated for improvements to the amphitheater and the sound system. Now, we're going to have more on this tomorrow, as well as some other updates on the events happening in our region. Up next, I sit down with Dr. Christine Duffy. She's the president of SUNY Adirondack, and she's here to talk about a new building that's being constructed to expand their STEM program. Plus, I also sit down with Ron Montesi. He's a county supervisor for Warren County, and we're joined by Mike Consulo. He's the executive director of the Lake George Regional Chamber of Commerce, and they're here to talk about the Italian American Civic Club, what they do, and how they give back to the community. But first, if you see news happening, you want to share a story idea. How about join us for an interview? Give us a call on the hotline. The number is 798-8000. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Look Today. A couple of lookouts tonight. First, we messed up, and I want to apologize to our viewers. We did not show up last night at the Queensbury Town Board meeting. It rarely happens, but it did happen. And of course, I heard from some of the supervisors today that it was one heck of a meeting. So I apologize, and we will be back at the next Queensbury Town Board meeting. And secondly, you know, a lot is said about the decade of the 60s. And it's important to note that it was 53 years ago today that JFK, John Kennedy, our president, was assassinated in Dallas. In many ways, people thought that that started that whole era of the Beatles saying, "I wanted to hold your hand." And the whole country went through this unbelievable time of trying to heal itself after that. John Kennedy was only 43 years old when he was elected president, and immediately was faced with issues like the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs, and of course, Vietnam. So any of us that are old enough to remember that know how formative that was for all of us. And the rest of you should maybe just take a look back. We seem to worry about things that are a lot less important today. That's it. Tonight on Look TV, it's a Queensbury Town Board meeting, not the recent one. And don't forget, tune in tomorrow night for the stories that matter to you. Good night, everyone.